If you're a communist or socialist, I want you to make sure that you use the appropriate 300 blackout ammunition in your 5.56 NATO chambered AR-15s. For everybody else, please like and subscribe for more content. Hey, I'm Chris, and today we're going to be talking about a multitude of things. It's going to be kind of a general discussion. A little bit of preparedness while traveling, a little bit of what's going on, current events right now, and maybe some gun stuff. So, a little bit of background today. I'm traveling to Chicago. Right now I'm in Indiana. I'm passing exit 41 through Uniontown, Indiana. And I got to go do an IR scan at a hospital up there. I hate Chicago, so I pack extra stuff because I don't plan on leaving the hotel. So I've got a bunch of extra stuff that I'm going to be doing while in my hotel, such as I brought a portable reloading press as a continuation of our reloading basics series. I'm working on the part 2 to that video. Steve and I did shoot the 5 rounds each or 7 rounds each after we did the ladder loads on that, and we didn't have great results. I'll show you that footage, and I'll show you what we plan to do to remediate some of that. And after that, we do plan on doing some lead casting stuff. Casting bullets. After I get some 5.56 rounds loaded up and I'm comfortable with the loads that we got there, I do plan on doing a whole ass series on 300 Blackout, because 300 Blackout's a really fun round to reload. And I'll talk more about that here later. For now, as I've talked about, we'll talk about the present. Talk about the past, talk about the present, talk about the future. So the past, we talked about some videos that I did, and I want to talk about some of the comments on those videos. Like I've done a couple of videos on bug out bags. I have my bug out bag with me right now, and bug out bag, go bag, get home bag, whatever. I use it for a lot of different things. As it stands right now, I'm going to be 300 miles, give or take, away from home. And that's a long distance to travel. And that's why I carry a lot of extra stuff that I do. Now, I am going to be rearranging some of the stuff in the bag. I've got a MSR Whisperlight International liquid fuel stove coming in, and a couple liquid fuel canisters for that. I plan on using kerosene with it, and the reason kerosene instead of gasoline is because kerosene is a little bit less volatile, and I would have the ability to run it off gasoline as well. It's got different nozzles for it. I plan on doing a video on that. And to reiterate, I don't plan on editing this at all, so it might be a little jumbled because I'm just kind of driving and shooting from the hip on a lot of this. But to reiterate, so some of the comments I got on the go bags was, it's too heavy, it's you don't have the right setup. Well, the reason I have the particular setup that I do is because that setup works for me. It is my setup that works for me for these long trips. And on these long trips, I do carry a lot of extra stuff because I don't know what's going to happen. If something gets bad enough to where I'm going to have to walk home, and use that bug out bag to walk home, I'll shed unnecessary weight on it. If I have to. But as it stands right now, I'm pretty comfortable making about 10 or 12 miles with my current setup, with everything that I have. Now, granted, it's going to get lighter as I go because, a lot of food's going to get used. I'd assume some ammo is going to get used out of it. I do have more ammo than I would really need in it, and I keep that ammo in there because I keep the bag with me everywhere I go. And a lot of times I go to Steve's and I shoot. So you might have seen in that reloading video part 1 that, you know, we were shooting through a chronograph. Well, in order to get to that point, I had to set up the chronograph, make sure the chronograph was lined up with the rifle, and then I had to shoot practice rounds through the chronograph to verify that the chronograph was working correctly, so I didn't waste the rounds that I loaded and it didn't pick up the data. Because that particular Caldwell chronograph is finicky with certain light situations. I do plan on getting a new one in the future. If anybody wants to help with that, you know, hit me up, send me some money, please. About 170 bucks for a new Bluetooth chronograph. The reason I'm calling out the numbers and we're writing them on paper right now is because, well, it's old, it takes a headphone jack, and none of our new phones have headphone jacks to even plug into this. So I'd have to use an old phone, and the batteries are pretty well shit on those old phones. And look at this asshole. Yeah, buddy. Okay. Yeah, you gotta watch these assholes on the roads. Dude, I'm going like fucking 85. Shit, I don't want to tell him myself. But... guess maybe I need to go 90. Fuck it. Alright, whatever. They're ahead of me, so they'll get pulled over first. But let me regain my train of thought. So, that being said, as far as the bug out bag stuff goes, I don't plan on walking home 300 miles. That's a very, very last case scenario. But that bag has plenty of extra food, fire starting gear, stuff I would need that if I wasn't able to make it home in one shot, that I could use a lot of that gear to stop somewhere, you know, and camp out. Ideally, hide my vehicle and still have my vehicle. If my vehicle's not functioning, that's a problem. And I'm not concerned about gasoline because, well, right now I'm driving a 2022 Toyota RAV4 Hybrid. I bought it brand new. I'm currently getting 36.3 miles to the gallon, real time. I average somewhere around, oh, that's the problem, because I'm leaving a gap because I got my radar cruise control set to leave a gap. Assholes. Like, you pass me to go the same fucking speed because I left a gap. Like, let's be real, people. If you're one of those people that do this, fuck you. 1. Leave a gap between the car ahead of you and the car behind you. 2 second rule. See, now he's slamming on his brakes. He's riding somebody's ass and he's slamming on his brakes. And now I have to close the gap because everybody's trying to fucking pass me. Constantly trying to pass me because one car in the left lane is going slow and I've got radar cruise control set to match their speed. Don't be those people. If you're on the road right now and you're listening to this, and you're in a Bronco Sport with an Illinois license plate with a bunch of dumb stickers on the back, I'm talking to you because you're the one in front of me. And that's why it's hard to do these videos on the road a lot of the times, because I do get distracted. I'm not looking at the phone or anything. I'm just kind of looking ahead. I know roughly when I need to get off. I got about 70 more miles before I need to get off the interstate onto I-465 West to go the loop around Indianapolis, and I'll pick up back on I-65, and then I'll pick up on I-80 after that. So I don't really need GPS. I make this trip quite a bit. So back to my original talk. What we were talking about is right now in this car, yes, I have the go bag. I've also got 2 5-gallon jerry cans of gasoline. I'm driving a 2022 RAV4 Hybrid that gets roughly 500 miles per tank of range, plus the 2 5-gallon cans of gas that are in metal jerry cans, perfectly sealed, no fumes, no anything in the back. I get about a 900, that gives me roughly a 900 mile range plus or minus 50 miles. So I've got enough gas with me right now because I filled up before I left the house to make it all the way to Chicago and back. And to be honest, I could probably make it to Chicago and back on a single tank of gas. I probably would have been perfectly fine just throwing the 1 5-gallon can in. The reason I throw 2 in is because, one, I don't want to have to refuel anywhere in Illinois. Because when I left the house, I got gas for $3.08 a gallon in Shepherdsville, Kentucky. And by the time I get to the area I'm in Chicago, gas is going to be $5.60 a gallon. It's awful. And the reason that is like that is because of, well, it's Chicago. And they got a lot of taxes. And, yeah, I hate Chicago, if you can't tell. And I'm not a big fan of anybody with an Illinois license plate because they typically can't drive with a crap. So in an ideal situation, I wouldn't be walking home. And if I am walking home, I'm going to walk as far as I can with the gear I got, and then I'm going to start shedding gear. I've also got a cart right here, and I've got a Milwaukee Packout set that I would dump all the non-essential gear for traveling in, and I'd put a lot of my nice-to-have stuff into it. Minus the IR camera. I would definitely keep the IR camera because that, in combination with the shitty little night vision, we got a speed check. We're gonna slow her down. So, that being said, I know I get interrupted on the road a lot. I do apologize. Bear with me. It is what it is at this point. But I gotta get some content out, you know, and I'd like to talk, and what better time to talk than now? There'll be a video version of this on YouTube. There'll be an audio version of it on Spotify and YouTube and Amazon Music and wherever else I put this. So I'm going to camp out the right lane for a while, just chill. I think it'll be a little easier that way. I'm not really concerned about making good time right now. I plan on getting the hotel, getting everything set up, reloading some ammo, doing a video on that and all that. Anyways, back to this. I have a Packout that it's a roll around Packout. It's got big wheels and I would be able to off-road it. Now, if it gets so bad to where I'm unable to drive my vehicle back, so I did run out of gas or whatever, I've got enough gas to make it to Oklahoma and back. So, well, roughly, if I was to stop halfway and get gas, I would have enough. But I don't let it go below a half tank typically. So before I actually get to Illinois, I will stop for gas and go ahead and fill this up so I don't have to tap into my tanks. But God forbid I do run out of gas or whatever, or you know, I'm unable to get gas, an EMP goes off, which is extremely, extremely unlikely. You know, if the dollar collapses, which is way more likely to happen, and then, you know, gas goes up to $10 a gallon, can't get gas, the interstates are clogged, and I end up having to, you know, there's rioting somewhere that I'm trying, in the city I am, and I'm unable to get out with my car. That would be unfortunate, but I would have my Packout, and I would have a cart that I could roll off-road with, at least temporary, until I ditch that shit. And like I said, I'm definitely going to keep the IR camera, be about the only thing I keep out of that pack. In conjunction with my shitty night vision, that's gonna get me home because I'm gonna walk mainly at night, using these devices to see, whereas most people aren't gonna have those devices, and they're not gonna be fucking around at night, and I'll be able to avoid anybody because they're not gonna have any kind of nighttime distance. And that's kind of my plan if I did have to walk. And I've made it 10 or 12 miles with the current setup, you know. As it gets lighter, I'll be able to make it farther, yada, yada, yada. We've discussed that. But that was one of the comments I got was, well, you should get a foldable bicycle. I think that's a good idea. However, a foldable bicycle would require me to be on the road, and if I'm walking home, there's chances are the road's not safe. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not going to be a safe thing to be anywhere near a road. There's a famous saying that says, you know, roads are for people willing to get ambushed, or roads are for people wanting to get ambushed. And there's a lot of truth to that. I'm not going to take the road. I'm going to be in the woods. And it depends on the situation. You know, the woods are going to provide a lot of cover and concealment for you. The woods are going to also provide a lot of cover and concealment overhead. Because when you're under the tree canopies, like I'm sure you can see in the background, you know, I'm going through some woods right now. It's still very, very green. There's a lot of evergreens, and infrared cameras from the sky cannot pick up your heat signature through that big canopy of trees. So if that is a factor and you're running away from somebody that has IR capabilities, ISR capabilities, I'm going to stick to the woods anyways. That's, once again, extremely, extremely unlikely. More than likely, I'm going to, you know, it's going to be Trump wins the election or Kamala wins the election, and one side or the other is going to fucking riot and burn cities down. More than likely, the left side tends to burn more things down and riot than the right side. I got no skin in the game. I'm neither side of an analyst. I'm not playing that shit. I don't think things are going to go well either way. I do think if Trump gets in, we might get a little buffer of financial stability where we could kind of secure some extra gear before everything goes to shit. But either way, we're on a sinking ship. And that being said, you need to make sure you get your life raft, you know, property, somewhere to go, and make sure you stock it with the supplies you're going to need to survive at least a couple years of bad economic times. Whether it be the dollar collapses and ceases to be worth anything, or you just, you know, they inflate the dollar to the point where you can't really afford anything anymore. You know, either, you know, that's the most likely scenario right now, because the current cost of capital on the dollar is extremely high. I think I did a whole podcast, a video on it. I think like 12 of you watched it, but it was a really long one, and I did a lot of calculations on it, and then I ended up doing a short on this is how inflation works, and a lot of people watched it, and a lot of people did not like it. I got a lot of dislikes on that one, and I'm sorry. I'm better at math than I am in English. I actually read and write math better than I do read and writing English and speaking English. And the math is correct on that, guys. And if you are mad about it and you don't like that, you know, and you're scared about it, do something about it. I'm sorry. You know, I'm sorry you didn't like that, but you need to take that information in, absorb that information, and you need to do something about it, because the dollar collapsing is honestly the most likely scenario we got right now on something bad going on. Besides, you know, minor cities burning down, you know, God forbid the cops kill somebody else or whatever, you know. I'm not going to get into the whole George Floyd thing and all that. A lot of stuff happened. We watched 50 U.S. cities burn to the ground in 2020. It was fun. I'm sure everybody listening to this remembers that time, and you know, you need to not forget it. You need to act accordingly. Next thing. So, anyways, that's why I carry a lot of stuff in my bug out bag the way I do. I think I've beat that one to death. What's another one? I guess we can circle back to some of the reloading stuff. So obviously, I just did a video on 5.56. Scott Satterley's 10-round reload method. The part 2 will be coming out soon. You'll see it. And things didn't go as planned, and I plan on doing a workaround that. A lot of that is going to be at this hotel I'm heading to right now, because I'm not starting work until tomorrow. And you'll see that. And then I do plan on doing lead casting and reloading for 300 blackout, because There was I think Garand Thumb did a video on 300 blackout, and it was less effective than 5.56. It is in fact less effective than 5.56, even in a short barrel. It just doesn't have a lot of ass behind it. It doesn't have a lot of range, but it does have some very, very, very useful properties to somebody in a survival situation. And the reason being is because, one, a 5.56 round, say you're shooting 55 grains, 62 grains, 75 grains, doesn't really matter, out of anywhere from a 10 to a 20-inch barrel. Doesn't really matter because you're talking, 500 feet per second difference. That bullet, when it exits that barrel, is spinning anywhere from 200,000 to 300,000 RPMs. And that's a lot of centripetal force exerted on that bullet. So, in that scenario, you have to run jacketed bullets. If you try to run a cast bullet out of wheel weights through that particular rifle, and it's exiting the barrel that fast, it doesn't matter if you've powder coated it, poly coated it, whatever coating, high-tech coated it, the centripetal force is actually going to rip that bullet apart. You're going to get gas cutting. You're going to get an extreme amount of leading because the rifling's not going to be able to properly engage into that bullet as well. You're going to get a lot of gas cutting, a lot of leading in your barrel, and the centripetal force is basically going to rip that bullet apart. You're not going to get. You might be able to put lead down range, but you're not going to get any kind of accuracy out of it. And it's ultimately going to foul your barrel to the point to where it's going to cause malfunctions. And it's going to foul your gas system to the point where it's going to cause malfunctions. This is where 300 blackout comes into play because, I can cast anywhere from 115 grain all the way up to 230 grain bullets. 300 blackout will work with those wide range of bullets. And you might get velocities up to around 2,000, 2,200 feet per second max. And those velocities are about the top end that you're going to want to use a cast lead bullet for. So it works out. Also, Spear makes a 150 grain gold dot projectile that expands down to 1,400 feet per second, has an extremely high ballistic coefficient, and I can get about 2,100 feet per second out of it accurately out of a 10-inch barrel, 10-inch 300 blackout barrel. And, once again, I did the Scott Satterley's 10-round ladder test load on those and came up with this load, and I ended up right around, I think it was like 2087 or something, and that was where my accuracy node was, and I had great results with those bullets. And when I mean great results, they shoot right around MOA, a little bit sub MOA. Like at 200 yards, I think I shoot like a 1 7/8 inch group. You know what I'm saying? Pretty well MOA. And I did sight those in out to 200 yards because anything 200 in, they're fairly flat, and then I start dropping off after 200. I'd be comfortable shooting a deer at about 300 yards with those. 400 yards if I was patient and I was able to do some more calculations and get my dope right. I would be confident shooting out to 400 yards. And 400 yards happens to be about when it hits that 1,500 feet per second mark, according to the ballistic charts, and I will lose expansion after that. So 300 yards in, I'd be very comfortable with that. It's a great round for deer hunting, especially with the 150 grain Spear gold dots. Now, some deer hunting stories. If you don't like hearing about animals dying, you might want to fast forward this. But I shot a lot of deer with the 150 grain Spear gold dots and 300 blackout, and they pretty much drop where they were standing. I shoot them, they drop, I drag them out of the woods. Pretty straightforward. Last year, I did some hunting with 223 out of a 16-inch barrel AR-15 platform, suppressed. It was the same upper that I was using in the reloading part 1 video was what I was deer hunting with, and I was using 64 grain Winchester Deer Hunter XPs. I believe I chronographed him somewhere around 2850 feet per second. And every deer I shot ran. And I'm not a big fan of deer running, so I shot them more. I think I had to put like 3 rounds in each deer. I actually had to do Mozambique drills on these fucking deer to get them to stop, which I've never had to do on a deer before. And it was kind of disappointing. It was like, one in the chest, ran. Second one in the chest. Okay, well, now I got to shoot it in the head. And by then, you know, they're running. Sometimes they would stop, and I could see the blood spurt, and they weren't dying. So I just put one in their head. And they were extremely accurate rounds, but anywhere from 3 to 4 rounds were expended per deer. Even suppressed, you know, out of a 5.56, it's still fairly loud. And, you know, my buddy would radio into me, "Hey, man, you all right back there?" "Yeah, I'm fine." "You're shooting an awful lot." Yeah, I am. "Yeah, I gotta stop shooting. I just gotta start shooting them in the head first time." You know? And so that was my experience hunting with 223. Did it get the job done? Yes. Was I happy with the results? No. And that's, you know, that's with a 64 grain projectile running 2,850 feet per second out of a 16-inch 1-1/8 twist barrel, suppressed. And I wasn't super excited about those results, obviously, because I don't like to shoot a deer more than once. 1, it ruins the meat, and 2, it's a pain in the ass. And then 3, a lot of people ask questions, and they question your marksmanship skills. And trust me, it wasn't my marksmanship skills. I was hitting center mass in the chest of the deer. One of the deer, I actually hit its heart. I blew the whole bottom half of the heart off of it. And it still ran, you know, 50 yards. And we still had to, you know, and the problem is I'm hunting on hills, and they like to run off the hills and into the ravines. I really don't want to have to try to drag these deer through those ravines. So I want them to drop where they stand. Well, with 300 Blackout, I've never had that issue. Hunting with 44 Magnum, I've never had that issue. 12 gauge shotgun, I've never had that issue. And 20 gauge shotgun, I've never had that issue. So, that being said, 20 gauge shotgun, about 100 yards in with my sabos was where I was seeing about what I'd be comfortable shooting with. Same thing with a 12 gauge slug, especially with our hand cast slugs, the 525 grain Lyman slugs that we cast. I think me and Steve may have talked about them. If not, it'll be in a future video. We cast our own shotgun slugs. It looks like a giant pellet gun pellet, but it's like it's bigger out. And then those things are hell on wheels on deer. It puts a 3/4 inch hole straight through them. And but 100 yards in, comfortable. With 300 Blackout, it gets me out a little bit farther, and I still get that effect where the deer drop where they stand. So that's why I personally like 300 Blackout for that. And also, I shot deer with cast lead bullets out of a 300 Blackout with really good results as well. I cast a NOE 347, 311 247 RG4 cavity mold is what I have. It's a hollow point mold, and I use the really deep hollow points. Me and Steve did a lot of experimenting with these. My voice is going to start going out, so you'll see me drink every once in a while. And these hollow point bullets, they don't feed very good. So what I did was I started assuaging .177 caliber BBs into the hollow point cavity, and that got them to feed better without deforming the hollow point, because the steel BB was in there and it would properly engage the feed ramps on the AR. So I had a lot of luck with those, both subsonic and supersonic. Subsonic, it'll drop a deer where it stands. Supersonic, it drops a deer where it stands and puts a hole the size of a softball through them, which ruins a lot of meat if you don't get proper shot placement. So I ran those up to what I think it was like 1,530 feet per second, using Hodgson's little gun out of a 16-inch 300 blackout barrel. I've since sold that upper, but I've got another 16-inch. I've got another 16-inch barrel for 300 blackout. I do plan on building an upper on just for the 300 blackout series on that. But back to my original point, I've got a lot of options that I can cast. 168 grain bullets I've casted. They run about 1,600 feet per second. I'd be comfortable killing a deer with those. I can actually add pure lead into the mold before I add my wheel weight lead or harder lead. So the base ends up harder than the nose, and the nose will still expand down at lower velocities. And that deep hollow point will expand down to around 700 feet per second. You'll get full expansion, and they are hell on wheels with deer. I also cast a Lee 309-230 5R bullet, and it's got a claimed G1 ballistic coefficient of 0.688. Whether it's actually that or not, I'm not sure. But that particular bullet will yaw once it hits something, and it yaws extremely effectively. And basically, it's about like shooting a deer with a bow. You get about the same damage. They will run a little bit, and but in my experience, they don't run any farther than they do with 5.56, and it's a hell of a lot quieter, easier on your ears, and it allows more follow-up shots for deer around you as well. Especially suppressed, even supersonic suppressed through 300 blackout are, in my opinion, quieter than 5.56. But I've also got a suppressor that's built for 30 caliber that I use for both, and that would be why as well. Because I've got the baffles. I did a Form 1 on it. The baffles are drilled out to 0.375 inches with a dual hybrid clip on Totality Industry baffles. Solvent trap cups that they went out of business. I guess they were stealing the material or something. I don't know what the deal was with that, but yeah, I still got some Totality Industries stickers and stuff. But that's why I like 300 blackout. That, and when my another good advantage is in reloading, when my 5.56 brass is shot out, when the neck cracks on it, I can cut it off and anneal it and make it into 300 blackout. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I could do the same process and even bring it down further into 9mm by 19, as the base is still the same size. I have yet to try that yet. You might actually have to turn the case on if you take it down that road. But as far as, I've got a jig that cuts 5.56 down to 300 blackout. That's how I get all my 300 blackout brass, is I make it myself out of 5.56 brass. And I keep same head stamps and weigh them out for all my hunting rounds, and then I do like a whole mix. Now, mixed head stamps on 5.56, you get better results than mixed head stamps on 300 blackout, because anytime you have less powder, the case weights, anytime the cartridge is smaller, case weight, bullet weight, and powder charge weight is all going to have a greater effect on everything as far as accuracy is concerned. But yeah, so I shoot the neck out of my 5.56 rounds, cut them off, swage them down with 300 blackout. That's another advantage. Another advantage is, especially in like the 2016 Obama era, when ammo was really scarce, and then COVID when ammo was really scarce, I used to get a lot. Well, he's been kind of out of everything recently, but when he wasn't out of everything, I got a lot of surplus powders off of GIbrass.com. A guy named Jeff Bartlett Reloaders. He's in Owensboro, Kentucky. Instead of paying the hazmat fee, I just drive down there and I'd pick it up and I'd order a bunch of powder at a time. So I've got roughly 10 pounds of IMR 7383 milsurp powder. It was used in the 50 caliber spotter tracer round for the 106 millimeter recoilless rifle, I think. Don't quote me on that. And that's a very, very finicky powder. And but I can get all these, and I've got a bunch of 50 BMG powders. Now, these powders traditionally won't work in anything but really, really, really large case capacity rounds, like 300 Win Mag, 30-06, all the biggins that generate, high pressures, high case capacity, need a slow burning powder. Typically won't work in 223, 556, or 300 Blackout. But the caveat to that is the 300 Blackout has such a small case capacity that I could fill the case up with these milsurp powders and then duplex them with a pistol powder to get them to cycle and throw pills downrange with a reasonable velocity, a reasonable accuracy, without really having the case capacity available to really blow my rifle up. Now, that being said, don't try this at home. I don't recommend you doing this, and I'm not responsible if you get hurt. But what I did was I filled the case up to capacity with IMR 7383. I will go into greater detail with this. This is paraphrasing. Obviously didn't cycle, so I weighed what a compressed 103% charge of this was, and I'll show you how to do that later. Ran it, didn't cycle. So I backed a grain off of the IMR 7383 and added a grain of Hercules Unique, Alliant Unique, BR5, which burns similar to Unique, a milsurp powder, or a pistol powder that around the burn rate of Unique powder. And then fired it again, no such luck, did it, fired it again, no such luck, did it, fired it again. And then I got it to cycle the bolt with a 230 grain bullet. And I got about 1,200 feet per second out of that 230 grain bullet. And I've got about 2 MOA out of that, which is plenty good to shoot a deer out to 200 yards. And I would be comfortable shooting a deer out to 200 yards with that, provided I had the proper dope, and I actually verified that I could hit something out to 200 yards with it. I believe the rifle was sighted out to 100, and from 100 to 200, I would just have to aim a foot higher for that particular projectile. That was the difference. So you get Kentucky windage it. Don't quote me on that. I will get I'll get the actual ballistic data on that whole thing later on. And once again, it was the Lee 230 grain bullets with the high ballistic coefficient. I didn't really duplex with the NOE bullets yet, but I do plan on doing a video on that. And to get the Lees to yaw and expand and do all that fun stuff, like I said, you could put pure lead in first. I actually made a scooper out of some old steel cased Russian rounds. I think I used the old Wolf 556 or some shit. I just cut them to whatever capacity of pure lead I wanted. I'd dip out pure lead, dump it in my molds, and then I'd fill the rest with my wheel weight lead, which was a lot harder, and then I would water quench it, which would harden the bases up enough to withstand higher pressures and not lead my barrel, and then at the same time provide enough squish to properly engage the rifling and seal the gas, while leaving a soft point in the front for expansion. And that's how I did a lot of that. So there's always workarounds. So love 556. I love 300 Blackout for cheap practice, homesteading, everything. I mean, if I had to, I could even single base a powder out of cotton balls or sawdust using drain cleaner and potassium nitrate I could either secure out of a niter bed, or you can use Spectracyte tree stump remover. I'm pretty confident, and I'm pretty confident because I may or may not have done this before, that I could nitrate that, keep it below a 13% nitration, colloid the nitrocellulose with starting fluid and acetone into a paste, and then roll that paste out into a sheet, cut it into certain sizes for certain burn rates, because the burn rate is going to be determined on the size of the granules, and then reload 300 blackout with that in a capacity to push a cast lead bullet downrange with enough velocity to kill a critter and provide, you know, a hunting round for 100 yards in, 200 yards in, accurate. I'm very confident in that. And I can honestly say I couldn't do that as well with 223 because well, one, it's got a larger case capacity. It's got a tighter bottleneck, and there's a better chance of things going boom with it. And who knows, I might actually try to duplex 223 with some of these milsurp rounds. I don't think I'll get enough velocity out of it to where it would be worth my while to do. Because the thing with 5.56 is it's a light projectile. You got to have a lot of velocity to, one, get any kind of range out of it, and two, have any kind of terminal ballistics with it. Because that high velocity traveling through and hitting and yawing is what creates that hydrostatic shock that's able to drop things quickly and effectively. But, you know, and the two are apples to oranges. But that is personally why I like 300 blackout. And in my go bag, when I'm traveling to a state that's legal to have, I would keep my 5.56 with me because of ammo commonality, lighter weight ammo, and all that good stuff. Because I'm going to use, you know, mainly I got a lot of factory ammo too. I wouldn't use reloads in a self-defense situation. I'm not going to use that in any kind of self-defense situation unless things got drastically fucking bad, like as a mass shooter or something, and I just happen to be next to that bag. But generally I'm going to use factory ammo out of that, or reloads with components that I have to buy and I can't produce my own. And another factor for 300 blackout is I can reload it with cast bullets for about 10 cents a round right now, and 8 cents of that cost being the primer, about a half a cent of it being the cast lead bullet, about a half a cent of it being the brass, and the rest being the milsurp powder that I bought for $48 for 8-pound jugs that I have a metric shit ton of. I think I've got like 50 pounds of powder or something, just milsurp powder. And so that's why. And the whole reason that brought this conversation up was a comment I made on Garand Thumb's video where he did 300 blackout versus 5.56. And in no way was I disagreeing at all. I totally agree with everything he said as far as ballistics and carrying 5.56 over 300 blackout. That's why I don't carry 300 blackout in this bag. But around the homestead, once the 5.56 ammunition dries up, if it ever dried up, I'm very confident in making everything I would need for 300 blackout, especially lower pressure rounds. And with lower pressure rounds, you also get a longer brass life. You're not beating up the brass so much, you're not work hardening it as much, and all that.
In about 10 miles, left I-65.
And with that, in 10 miles, I must go to I-65 North. So I'm probably going to, we'll give it about another 10 minutes of talking, and I'll get off of here and we'll post this. So generally that's, I guess the general takeaway from this is I will have a lot of reloading content coming out. I did do a lot of gardening content as far as like doing polyculture and stuff. And you know, it's kind of hit or miss on whether people wanted to watch it or not. People were more interested in go bags and shooting and all that, and that's understandable. But do keep in mind that all the ammo in the world ain't gonna do you any good if you don't have clean water and a food source, because you're gonna run out of water and food probably faster than you will run out of ammo. And you need to be able to put food on the table, which ammo would help with that. But so does having perennial woody crops, doing a good polyculture, building your own seed bank to where the seeds are climatized to your area, I guess. Because the more you grow and save your own seeds, the more those plants become used to your soil type and used to the insect load and used to the blights and funguses and whatever you got in your biome. And when all that happens, those plants become more resilient over time. They adapt. They generationally adapt. So, you could be eating spaghetti squash a lot, like I am. I actually brought spaghetti squash with me to cook on the road. It's already pre-cooked. I'm going to just heat it up with my sous vide machine, but you get the idea. So take gardening seriously, guys, whether it be indoor, outdoor, hydroponics, dirt, perennials, annuals. Just take gardening seriously and grow your own food. At least try to establish some kind of self-sufficiency in that aspect. And of course, always have your water purification, all that fun stuff too. I recently got 3 50-gallon rain barrels that I'll be putting up, and I'll be doing videos on those as well. I'm in the process of designing and 3D printing basically a sand filter for them. I don't know how well it's going to work. I'm not going to really put the STL files up until I printed it and ran water through it. And I'm able to see how well it filters and make sure that it's able to adequately get enough water through it to where it's not just going out the overflow. I want to catch as much rainwater as I can, obviously. And I'll also be trying to scavenge some sump water out of my neighbor's basement that'll be ran through a filter back in the rain barrels, and then the overflow will just go directly into my my plants. So my plants will be constantly watered by, I bet this dude pumps 200 gallons of water a day out of his fucking basement. It's crazy. So I'll be showing you how to set a lot of that up and possibly how to backfeed your house with rainwater. In the event of emergency, you get a boil water advisory, and your grid water ends up being shit, goes down for whatever reason, you'll have rainwater as a backup, at least in some capacity, to be able to maybe take a Navy shower or two and have water to put in your Berkey to filter out. Recommend everybody gets a Berkey or some sort of really good water filtration. I wouldn't just go with a Brita or something like that. I would get something that really filters some shit out. I say Berkey. I like Berkey. I'm a Berkey snob as far as that goes. Whatever you can find that's effective and works, get it. And make sure you got your water purification, some food stored, some food production, ammo stored. Some ammo production would be nice. And guys, you can get into reloading for fairly cheap if you get a single stage press. If you want to get into it on a budget, go Lee. If you don't give a fuck about a budget, go Dillon. I went Hornady. I wish I would have went Dillon. I'll leave it at that. I'm not saying Hornady is a bad press or anything. It's okay. But the Dillon press is so reliable you can automate it. And then of course I got my dad's old Lyman Spar T or T-Mag. I'm not even really sure what turret press it is that I'll be reloading with in this hotel. And I 3D printed a primer catch for it so I don't get primers everywhere. And that's another subject too, is I do got a video coming out on 3D printing where I've been upgrading my 3D printer. I did post some Octolapse clips that I've taken to print some of the upgrades for the 3D printer. And I highly recommend getting a 3D printer as well. And, you know, the podcast channel slogan has been navigating the modern world with some old school wisdom. Now, you see a lot of old school wisdom as far as, you know, I'm 35, Steve's in his 40s. We're older, you know, Steve doesn't do Excel as well as I do. So when we do chronograph stuff, you will see us write it down on paper because it's easier for both of us to write it down on paper and then for me to put it into Excel later, as opposed to, you know, us both trying to fiddle fuck with Excel. And hazardous cargo. As far as that goes, you know, we do a lot of old school stuff. Reloading and bullet casting, that's old school stuff. But we also do a lot of new school stuff, like 3D printing. I use my 3D printer a lot. A fucking lot. For all kinds of stuff, like 3D printing stuff for reloading, for bullet casting. I'm even thinking about 3D printing a whole box to automate my bottom pour lead spout thing. And right now I've got a PVC box, but I really don't like it. So honestly, I'm probably just going to 3D print my own. Then I don't have to worry about drilling holes. I can just have the holes available. And it'd be a lot easier on my, and it'd look really cool. So, with that, I would consider getting a 3D printer, and if I was to get a 3D printer, I would consider getting an Ender 3 and doing some upgrades to it, or the Ender 5 if you've got the money for it, because it's got a lot of the upgrades already done to it. And short of being in an enclosure, you could print polycarbonate with it. And you can do a lot of stuff with 3D printers. I 3D printed snap caps in 9mm. To practice speed reloads, tactical reloads, and failure to feed, failure to fire drills with my pistol. I've got them printed in 12 gauge. I did try them in my 12 gauge pump shotgun, and the rims kind of busted off and caused malfunctions, which in all honesty was a good learning curve into how to fix that without having to completely disassemble the whole gun. So I learned how to clear issues with feeding on my 12 gauge because of that. And the snap caps work really well in 9mm. I haven't tried the 300 blackout or 5.56 ones yet. I got them printed, but I haven't ran them through the actual rifles or pistols to make sure they work. And what's some other good stuff I've 3D printed? Oh yeah, I 3D printed all the stuff for the enclosure. I 3D printed my entire electronics case for the 3D printer. And I'm going to 3D print my rainwater catchment filter thing, which basically will consist of a 45-degree angle that the water will hit. That'll be porous, that I'll put a window screen on, and that'll keep all the organic matter and stuff bigger than window screen out of my system and out of my filter. And it'll just wash off to the side where it'll have to be cleaned out, once a month. Now, we don't have a lot of trees around us, so I don't suspect having a lot of leaves or anything get caught on that. And then I do plan on, 3D printing this box that'll sit over the whole thing. It'll have an overflow on it. I plan on giving it plenty of head so water pressure can force water down harder. And then I'll probably, I'll burn some logs, gather some charcoal. I'll throw a bunch of charcoal in the bottom. And then on top of it, and then I'll put a sieve over top of that. And then I'll put a thin layer of sand, and then I'll put limestone, like pea gravel limestone. And the pea gravel limestone will probably make the water harder But when you have, if there's any kind of heavy metals or anything, making it basic, making the water basic will cause a lot of that to precipitate out. And rainwater is naturally acidic due to carbon dioxide in the atmosphere as it falls through. When you mix water with carbon dioxide, you get carbonic acid. It's very, very lightly acidic, not very super acidic. And then when it passes through the limestone, that'll kind of neutralize the pH on that. And turn that carbonic acid back into water with, you know, possibly a little bit of calcium and lime in it. And then, you know, I might even put little water softener pellets in it. It just depends on what I'm going to use it for. It's mainly going to be for watering the yard, watering the garden, because the water bill was pretty high on that. And no matter how much water, you know, none of this water went through MSD's drain, but I still got charged for it, which sucks. Because the MSD fee is twice as much as the water fee is. So I'm hoping to eliminate some of my water bill by doing this. And I also want to get some panels up. I'd like to work on some earth batteries and stuff like that as well. So that's kind of where this channel is going, where this podcast is going to go is, you know, we might rebuild some old school earth battery patents. We're going to teach you how to reload and how to cast and how to do some extremely crazy shit as far as that goes. Whoa. Well, hey there, buddy. There's no really shoulder there. Probably should have pulled off the road just a little bit there. But with that, and I know there's been some pauses and my voice is annoying and all that, but if you made it this far at 56 minutes and 55 seconds, I do appreciate it. And I want to say thank you for listening. And I hope you actually get some information off of this. And if you are a communist, seriously, don't put 300 blackout in your 5.56 chambered AR. That was a joke. Oh my God, I can't believe I got to say that to people. I'm going to have to put a disclaimer in the front saying that, you know, these are my views and opinions. Don't try this at home. Just because I said that. Because some asshole's going to do it. You know some asshole's going to do it. And he's going to blame me for it and try to sue me for it. And then, oh my God, these fucking idiots. I hate communists. Anyways, just wanted to have a quick chat with you guys. And I'd like it if you guys would comment on some content that you'd like to see. You know, like I did get some feedback in a comment I made on that Garand Thumb video where people would like to see content like that. So okay, I'll make it. You know, so I'm on the road to making a lot of that content. But I'm a little autistic when it comes to like super duper details on stuff like that. And so I do get like super detail oriented in that aspect of things. Like I've done a lot of weird stuff with reloading and casting. And it's off the wall stuff that a lot of people haven't done unless you've visited the castbullets.gunloads forum. You know? And I want to share some of those experiences with you guys. And I want you guys to be more prepared for what's coming, because regardless of if, you know, old Daddy Trump or Mama Kamala gets in office, fucking the dollar's going to go to shit. The economy is eventually going to collapse. And yeah. It turns out you can't just create money out of thin air and expect things not to have consequences when you do that. It's bad. You don't want to do that. And our government loves doing that. And that's why, you know, you can make six figures now and you're considered barely middle class. It's called, what was the term I heard used? Maybe, I think Jack Spirko from the Survival Podcast. Downward class migration. And if you ever want me to do any like weird autistic math on all that stuff too, no problem. I'll run you through all the math on it. I can also, I'm a master electrician, I'll run you guys through all the math on windmill calculations, solar calculations, power output for what you could expect for those things, power output for earth batteries, how galvanic action works. And I plan on I can do some videos on my infrared thermography, infrared cameras and stuff like that as well. And with that, I really need my GPS right now to understand where the hell I'm going. So I'm gonna get off here, guys. And I do appreciate y'all listening, and thank you for listening to me ramble for a little bit while I was fighting traffic. I just made it to Indianapolis. I'm about maybe halfway there, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.